Okay, my name is Daniel. As Dave introduced, I work at Insomniac Games now as a project manager, and I also work on a few other AAA projects at Ubisoft before Insomniac. And today I'm here to talk about how to launch a career in video games, how I did it and what I do, and hopefully I can inspire you to pursue a path to find your dream in video games as well. Just before I start, I'd like to do a quick survey. So how many of you here are in the major of art, fine art, video game art, or animation? Wow, majority, awesome, cool. How many of you are majored in game design or programming? Nice. And how many of you are from high schools around here, or in high school now? Cool, all right, thanks guys. So that's great. So let me introduce myself a little bit by telling you where I come from. So I come from a family where my parents and my mother's parents are all professional artists. So deep roots in the family. And just by the way, I like to use image to tell my story. So visual storytelling is my thing. So there will be a lot of images. I think they are interesting. They will inspire your imagination about what I'm talking about. So let's see. I come from China, the northern part of China. The city is called Shenyang, which is almost like a counterpart of upper state New York, Rochester City, something like that. It's very industrial, very cold in the winter, so you guys are familiar with that. I grew up in this college, art college, where my grandparents taught art and my parents graduated from. So I was surrounded with art students like you guys, professors, very creative people, ever since I was little. And my mother taught me that art is an exploration of human experience. So I always remember that, and since I was a kid, I started to explore what I see in people, in the society, in the world, by making drawings and paintings. And I still do that today as a hobby, although I'm in production now. So my job switched from creating art, making art, to helping my team do that or help them solve problems. But I never stopped trying to explore human beings by drawing my thoughts down. It's like a writer, right? So when you have an observation of people or the world, you write it down. So for me, my diary would be in a notebook with my pen, and I draw down or pin down what I think. And these are some quick paintings that I did on human figures. Later on, I got interested into animation, which I believe a lot of you are studying right now. So started with 2D animation. This is a personal project based on the story of Journey to the West. It's a group of friends who actually travels to the United States. This is an edutainment project that I worked on. The idea is that these characters, they from the ancient China, right? And they travel through the ocean, the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean, to get to the United States. They met a lot of things that they haven't seen before, like Halloween or like the jazz band, and then talk to them. They learn new vocabularies, new culture, new knowledge, and then that product will be animation-based, but also interactive. There are some concept paintings that I created. So this is ancient China. When they were in China, it's a team of 5 people, including the horse, which is also a character. And I also had traditional training in fine art. So these are my oil paintings on characters. These were commissioned by some collectors. And through that, I developed my skill. So you always start with the realistic training, right? Some of you may not like that because you don't feel like this is creative enough for you to do what you want. But this will be important for you to get to the later stage. These are commissioned work by a gallery owner in China. So he asked me to create a series of paintings on the theme of sex. And then I did a lot of study drawings, which are the smaller images. And then later on, I created a series of paintings. And they were all collected, and they were shown later. So you can see these are stylized paintings, and this one as well. I heard that there will be high school students in this room. I don't want to be sued by your parents afterwards, so I put some censorships on there. But these are fine art. They're on the walls at somebody's home now, so they're legit, but still. This is the style that I developed later. As you can see, I probably was influenced by Francis Bacon and probably Picasso a little bit. But it's important for you to get influenced by people earlier in your career. You need to have a passion for this. And then later on, you'll find your own language as an artist. So later on, when I entered production, I started doing concept art a little bit. These are some studies on a character, a creature, let's say, a monster that I was working on. And then the character on the far right side, the bat-like human character, got further developed into a new character. So what I'm talking about here is that once you had the skills you need, and then you select a path to enter the industry that you want to work in, it is important that you had the patience in the beginning to do the fundamental work, the groundwork. Although there might be more, it might be less interesting, less intriguing, you will have the core skills you needed later on in production. So for me, I need to create these characters like on a blank paper, draw them out of my mind, and then the proportions, the anatomies, they're relatively all correct. So without the trainings beforehand, that would be harder to do. So later on, you need to render them in Photoshop, and basically this character is ready for a 3D artist to take over and create it in Maya for the game or the film. And basically that was my background as an artist. And I'm going to start talking about my professional experience. This is the first job I had at a company called Creative Capers Entertainment in Glendale, California. So the logo with the green background, the Tiki had, is their logo. They're called CCE. So when I was at CCE, I worked on many different smaller projects. They were a medium-sized studio at the time. And then I worked with Yeti CGI. I think a lot of you might be familiar with this company, where David worked there at the time. We worked on this indie iOS-based mobile game called Gilbert Grimsley Jr. Undertaker. And this is the main UI page, where it shows you all the levels of this game. And I painted the background of this UI page and all the main elements as an artist at the studio under the direction of the art directors, David and Terry. And so these are the themes of each level. To pick this one, David animated a character, Gilbert, and these elements were all set up as triggers to basically prompt. For example, you can prompt a note and then they'll give you some clues. This is a puzzle game, adventure game. So the animations will be set up, the game design, the coding, everything is working together. This is the first full video game project that I worked on as an artist. And David was the animator on this project. He animated Gilbert and a lot of other characters, including the little dog over there. And that's how I got intrigued by the interactivity of video games, rather than just creating art, right? Creating paintings. This is a higher level of achievement once you've completed a project like this, although it's a smaller project comparing to the later projects I worked on. And at Capers, I also worked on multiple Disney projects, including this one called The Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom, which is a theme park game project. Basically, you use the collection cards that you can purchase at the Disney World, I believe, in Florida. And there are multiple portal locations in the park that you can use a card to activate, and then there are animations playing inside. It's interactive. So I painted a lot of montage paintings that's telling the stories, once you're looking at the videos when you're playing the game. And they're the art direction of Terry and David. So we wanted to make these look like, oh, we're going back to time. So the style is like, painted by chalk, but they were actually painted in Photoshop. And another theme, so these were the interactive elements in the game. So we wanted to make them look like they're reliefs on like an Egyptian pyramid wall or something like that. So, and there are also other styles of montage art that we used. And when you work at a smaller studio, it could be a good thing because you are wearing many different hats. So I also had to learn on the project After Effects compositing. So essentially on the video on the left, I drew the characters, I cleaned them up on paper, I painted them in Toon Boom Animation Pro, and then I composited the file, so there are several layers, the two chess pieces, the table, and the background, 3 layers, and then the portal in the front. And then I had to use After Effects to put the audio, the videos, all the visual elements together, and then animate them. And the one on the right is a more complicated one. So all the villains were getting sucked into the portal, at the end of the game. So that's one of the cool things when you start your career in a smaller studio. But there are also cool things you can learn from the bigger studios. So I'll talk about that later. So that's my first job. And later on, this brought me back into memory. I worked on this project with Yeti CGI as well. This is my first official 3D project. So I modeled the 3D model, low model of Simba on the upper right. And so Zane, I believe, or Mel, actually corrected my UVs and showed me how to do a model properly. And I think they did a demo for me to show me how to paint the diffuse map, the specular map, and the normal maps on this model. And I learned that, and then I applied that in the next day on these characters. So I modeled these, most of them I believe, at least. I could not remember. And then I painted their maps, the colors and everything. So that wasn't, I guess I wasn't a slow learner, but that got back to my point of you need to have a really solid art background if you want to pursue an art path, although computer art or animation, because that will help you tremendously later on when you get a project like this. Like somebody just showed you how to paint this, like in a demo, like an hour-long demo. And then you need to be able to pick that up real quick and learn the tools and do production level quality art very quickly. So that will become your job later. But currently, right now you're just learning. So just keep that in mind. Someday you will be required to do something real quick and on a high quality. And what you're doing now is essential. So just don't think lowly of what you're doing now, the smaller jobs, the minor tasks that you're required by your professors to do. Someday they will help you tremendously when you need them. And later on after that, we got a number of projects that needs to paint or create 3D assets. So for the Club Penguin, we created a lot of suits that you can purchase in the Club Penguin world. That was a fun project. So we painted a lot of Marvel suits and the Marvel Disney movie suits, and you can find them there. And then in-game, there are 3D assets, actually. So that was my first job at Capers. I learned a lot of things, including production, which I actually became a professional production project manager afterwards. So the first project I worked on at a company called Original Force, who were working for DreamWorks at the time on their TV shows, How to Train Your Dragon for TV, and this new show, back then new show, Trollhunters. So we worked with the director, Guillermo del Toro at the time, and we did a lot of the character art and some animations and some visual effects for them. And I also worked on Ratchet Clank, the film, at that company, which we worked on the majority of the animation for the film at the time. So that was my first project manager job. And then I moved on to video game production at Ubisoft. So at the time, I was a project owner for 3 major projects: Far Cry Primal, Watch Dogs 2, and For Honor. So, and later on, I moved back to California and then started working for Insomniac. So the first project, and the only project for now, is Spider-Man that I've been working on in the last 2 years for the PS4. And basically, that's my professional experience. So I'll pick one project per studio rather than giving you an inventory of my full experience. So at Ubisoft, I'll focus on For Honor, this project. I was the project owner of that project at the time, which means that I have full responsibility for the success or the failure of the project. So basically, I had to give the presentation at the end of the year to the whole studio, including all the stakeholders and the entire studio members at the end of the year, to show them what we did, what we achieved at the end of the year. So there were 350 people sitting in front of me at a time, and I was giving them the presentation on For Honor. So basically, for video games, everything started with an idea. So for For Honor, the idea was that for these three factions or clans, and their stories. So there are the samurais, the Vikings, and the knights, right? They're from different times in history, different, geographies. So the fantasy of having them fighting together for their honor was the idea. And then based on that, the key characters were developed. So we worked closely with the lead studio at Montreal, the Ubisoft Montreal studio, to develop the ideas for these characters, which are the soul and the source of the game. And then later on, they became these characters, which we worked on. That was our main mandate, which was the character development, including the weapons and the other systems that I'll show you later. So there are the three factions, and each of them have different types of champions and minions as well. So the pipeline starts with concept art. Once you know what you want to make, you will have a number of concept artists to create the look of the champions that you'd like to produce. So this is one of the Viking characters. And then their weapons. So the thing about weapon concepts, or character concepts for that matter, is that you're not just creating a cool looking tool or an asset for the game, right? This thing needs to be fully functional. You need to think of it, if you are the fighter and you have this weapon, how you're gonna pull out the sword, right? How it's gonna tie to your wrist, how it's going to function, how it's going to be deadly threatening to your enemies. So basically, you're designing the experience rather than just drawing cool images. That's what I learned by working on this project. Artist's job can get to a point that it's basically designing. It's no longer just making cool art anymore. It's not fine art anymore at this point. It is for a product to function. So after the concept phase is done, you start with a base mesh. This is not a base mesh. I couldn't find a good image for the base mesh. Base mesh is a really simple 3D model that shows the right proportions, the right directions of this where this character would go. And after that, you will do the high poly mesh, and then the low poly mesh. So if you're not in the CG department, you may wonder, why do the high poly first? Why don't you start with the low poly mesh? Because later on, you can build on top of that, right? But that's not the case, because you need to build all the details into this in the rough model by ZBrush, and then go down to the low poly mesh. The reason being that you need to add all the details and bake them into the maps, and then apply them to a lower poly model that can be run by the game, which will reduce the memory cost and the budget. That's the process. So afterwards, after the low poly model is done, you start to bake all the textures onto the characters and do a polish pass, and then they become the characters in the game. The same process to the weapons as well. We treat them individually through the whole pipeline. So then you're going to say, oh, so you're just making characters, right? Big deal, because they're just characters, they're simple. But the thing is, when it comes to production, when you are making a product for the world, right, for people to pay money to buy, it's never that simple, because you need to create a whole experience, even though they're just characters. So for this character, Loki, he needs to have a female version of him. And then at the time, we were debating what kind of base model, which means the naked model of the character that you need to have, like how many different versions you need to have, how many different types you need to have. And for the females and the males, how they can relate to each other but not too similar. A lot of questions came up, and then you need to research their history and then see what the female Vikings look like at the time, how they behave, how they can be animated, how they talk. Do all the research on them, then start developing the concepts again, which for production, it could be a nightmare because you have a set schedule and budget, and now you have a new mandate. You need to fit this into the old mandate and make them look as amazing as possible. But eventually, when they all came realized in-game, you see this character sitting in the UI that's breathing, like it's panting, and then you feel like this is coming to life. At that moment, all the hard work you did just all paid off. It's the most wonderful feeling you can have, to see your work actually get realized. So this is a main character in the heroes menu that you can pick. And afterwards, we created a lot of ornaments, which is for the monetization of the game. So once you unlocked the heroes, you spend like hundreds of hours on the game with your favorite heroes, and then you started to get attached to them. And you probably want them to look different than the other players in the game, and you want to buy something special for your heroes, and here's a chance. You can purchase these ornaments that will be on the helmet of the characters for all the clans, all the heroes that you like. And then there are also the ideas of different armor pieces can be customized per your like. So the monetization strategies run deep. That's how video game companies make money out of guys like us, right? Very, very good. But I think it's legit because all the creativities the team pour in there worth the reward at the end. So these are different pieces you can customize in-game. And we created a lot of them. We may not necessarily create this screen, but I couldn't find them because I just searched the internet to find the images. So just and different type of office as well. So for the character development, it actually involves a lot of different aspects for the game. And so now you're probably asking this. So you showed me all the cool stuff, right? But you didn't make any one of those. You just make lame Lion King characters, right? So what did you do as a producer on that project, right? Did you just, slave the artist who's actually doing the work to death while sipping coffee next to him all day long? Well, okay, so let me go through the job of a producer in this case. Also in general, like what a producer do. So first of all, you are the brain of the company in terms of getting it done. So you need to do the planning. This thing is called a roadmap, which is showing you who is doing what by when, and then how you can get all the work done in time, in quality, in budget. So you can see there are 9 artists on this, and then for each character, whether it's male or female, it has a length of time that's planned. All the yellow cell for a week is a buffer, which means if the artist got sick, if there are actual additional feedback on the character that takes longer time, you need to take that into consideration even before you started working on the character development. And this whole planning phase is based on this master plan. And then later on, you need to have a schedule. Basically, this is detailed today for each asset. Basically when they're getting worked on, when they're getting completed. And this can be changed a lot. But you still need to have a plan in the first place, because once you have this, you can input all these information into a tracking database, for example, like Jira or DevTrack. And then the artist will get these tasks assigned to them, and then your job will be tracking them. So for a typical producer, you probably would spend more than half of your time doing planning and scheduling and tracking. And then after that, you're also responsible for prioritizing your team's work, because chances are, once you did all the planning and scheduling and tasking, they're probably overloaded with work, right? They could spend like 100 hours in the studio, but still couldn't finish all the work that you assigned to them. At that time, you need to start prioritizing things. This is called the Eisenhower box. It's very traditional, but it's very useful. Essentially, this box can grow bigger, right? So the idea is the cells on the upper left always are the most important things to do. They're both important and urgent. And the cell on the lower right bottom are the least important. So what do you do to the least important thing in your life? That's right. You never do it, right? You drop it. So the idea is you figure out what's the most important thing, what's the least important thing for not just yourself, for the whole team, for everybody in the team, and what's in the middle. So you can delegate them or plan it accordingly. And then the next job of a producer is also very important, is the solving and resolving of problems. So the problems in terms of things it could be many things, firefighting. It could be like a new feature were introduced into the game late, and you don't have the time and budget to do that, but you still need to do that in terms of making the project successful. So you need to figure out how to do that. It could be many other things, feature creeps, team got sick, major feedback from publisher or the stakeholders that can throw your whole schedule into the trash, and then make you start over, that kind of stuff. So you need to figure out how to solve those problems, because your job as a producer are not just sending and tracking tasks, right? That's too easy. Your job is to make sure that the project got delivered out of the door and successful. And then the resolving in terms of resolving conflicts between people and departments is also a major part of your job. So when you have conflicts in the studio on the project, usually what you do is to put a producer guy in there, right? So this guy will come in and say, hey guys, let's talk. But you can't just show up like Alex from Madagascar, right? They will say, get the heck out of here. We don't need a clown here now, man. We're solving real problems. So you actually need to be showing up like a real line, right? Somebody who's formidable, who they can trust, who they trust you to come up with an idea and to resolve the problem, and they can trust you to deliver at the end, because their jobs, their reputation is also on the line based on your decision, your actions. So essentially you're working together with them, but you need to resolve the problem to a level that everyone believes in it and they'd like to commit to it and dedicate it to solving the problem together. Essentially, a producer's job is not to solve the problem by yourself, right? Your job is to find a person who can actually solve the problem and have him solve the problem and help him remove all the dependencies that he has in case to achieve the problem solving. And the next big job for a producer is to defend for your team. By this, I don't mean to defend your team in terms of defending them when they're doing things wrong, right, from their responsibilities. It's basically you need to defend them when the projects are in the phase of feature creeps, right? They're too much work for your team. You need to defend them in terms of finding out, are these work necessary for us to do? Is crunching the right thing to do at this point? Because if it's not, you need to find out what we can do. And then at the very end, when there's nothing you can do, crunch is the last choice. It's definitely not a thing like a golden bullet you can pull or use all the time, because that will be disastrous in production for your team. That's definitely the last thing you can do. And there are also dependency situations. For example, if you work with our team and then design or animation are not done or their schedule has slipped, that will be a big thing that you need to defend your team for. Also, you can't just let the other department throwing work at your department saying, hey, we got this new idea. Can we just make this whole new room so that this character can tell his past as part of the storytelling? Probably not at a certain point, because that will generate too much work for a lot of departments, not just the art creating department. It could be for lighting, for audio, for visual effects, for a lot of departments down the line. So you need to defend your team in terms of that. And liaising. So as a producer, you are basically a piece of this machine, right, on this gear. That's making every gear run. So without you, there are probably problems. So you need to work with a publisher to keep them on the same page with where your projects are, what are the risks, and what are the solutions. And you also need to work very closely with marketing to let them communicate with the community, the fan base, and to let them show the content that you created. Also, you need to work with finance closely to let them know what's the budget situation. Different producers have different roles in different companies. So for me, at Insomniac, when I'm working at Insomniac and Ubisoft, I have different roles. So it's different, but in general, these are the main things for a producer. And at the end, there's budgeting. You need to figure out how much you need, and the head counts as well in the planning phase or pre-production of a project, and then try to stick to that plan, although that's almost never the case, right? The biggest problem in video game developing is that there is always not enough time. So your challenge is always to figure out how to get a game produced with limited time and budget, and also reach the paramount quality that no one has never reached before. So going back to For Honor, we also made a lot of environment and character props. May not necessarily be these, but the same type of work for the game. And so the assets got bigger, and we were talking about making Viking ships back then, but before I left the studio, there was no resolution. And we were also talking about level design and level art at the time, but I didn't know if they actually got them at the end. But eventually, some teams made them for the game, and they look awesome. And for the lion, we did make him, the one on the lower left for the game. So how much time do I still have? I have 15 minutes, okay. So the next project I worked on at Insomniac was Spider-Man. So let's talk a little bit about Spider-Man. I know a lot of you are, okay, let's show hands. How many of you are excited about the new Spider-Man project? Nice, okay, cool. Now let's talk about it. So Insomniac Games is the developer of this Spider-Man PS4 game. We're working with Marvel Games, and our publisher is Sony Interactive America. So for Insomniac Games, we worked on a lot of awesome projects before. So the previous project, also an open world game, is called Sunside Overdrive. This is an explosion of creativity. It's a really awesome game. And then we also worked on Ratchet Clank, which is a long-running franchise that a lot of you probably played when you were much younger. I did too. And we made a PS4 game the year before, which was very successful and beautiful looking. And the film that I worked on also was based on this. So a lot of cutscenes were used as footages for the film, which turned out to be a bad idea because when you're playing a game, what you're enjoying is the experience of playing the game. And the cutscenes are kind of like content fillers. But when you put all the cutscenes together as a movie, that movie is probably not that enjoyable, although it's very beautiful looking. So that's what happened. So the box office of this movie really tanked, but although it's very beautiful, I'm still proud of the movie. Lesson learned. Also, we made hardcore shooter games like Resistance, the trilogy. And we made VR games. There's a saying in Chinese called, the first one to eat a crab, not a crab. The crab, the animal that runs sideways, sea creature, is the brave one. So in this case, we were the first ones to develop VR games when no one knew what VR games was, right? The first one who ate a crab doesn't know that it's tasty. It looks creepy or scary, but it tastes really good. And we were the first one to create VR games when no one knew what VR games are and how to make money out of them. So we created these 3 projects, Edge of Nowhere, The Unspoken, and Ferris for Oculus back then. And we were the pioneers in the VR development industry. So we're very proud of our projects, and we're going to make more of them, hopefully in the future, which I cannot give you more details, but definitely getting better and better. And let's talk about Spider-Man. So on this project, okay, I have a lot of slides, but when I checked with my marketing director, he said Marvel doesn't like us showing slides that's taken from the videos because that's a lower quality image that may give people the wrong idea. So I need to show you this video that was shown before.
With Fisk behind bars, what's next?
And the city's safer than ever. Maybe Peter Parker can have more of a life.
Are you in trouble? Do you need money?
No, I mean, I'm a little behind on my rent, but no, I'm fine.
Take care of this place. It represents the best part of me.
This is Miles. He's gonna be helping out around here.
For acts of extraordinary bravery. I'm the one who kept order in this city!
What is this? Devil's breath.
Your city and everything you care about will be destroyed. The people will beg you for help, but you won't be able to save them.
Get more backup. Wait!
We've got to play this just right.
Maybe the city needs our friend more than you think.
Whew. Anyone else need a breather?
PlayStation.
Awesome. So, what you just saw there was a project that we worked on in the last 3 years, and by 200 really helpful, really talented developers at Insomniac, mostly in Burbank. So for this project, now I can show you these because you've seen the high quality images, and I just want to use this to make the make my point. So I worked on I'm the product owner of the open world system. So that includes the traffics, the pedestrians, the vignettes, essentially the living world. Also the creatures in the world. And then I'm also the producer of part of the open world experiences or the side quests. So I cannot give you more information on what they are, but these are some clips of what you see in the world, the problems Spider-Man needs to solve in the open world. So besides that, I'm the project manager on the entire art department, or the entire art pipelines, which starts with concepting again, right? So this is a concept of Peter's apartment, and the concept of Martin Lee fighting Spider-Man in the subway. And then it goes to the character department. Excuse me. That you create I wouldn't call this next-gen level, but really realistic, high-quality characters that has emotions, that comes to life, and also their materials, so the tech art team as well. The hair, how they look realistic, and then reflects the right amount of specular, and then their character, their costumes, their clothes, the silk, and everything, all the materials, and the rigging. So character, tech art, rigging, and also the environment of the world, which is really large. Visual effects. This is Mr. Negative's visual effects from the review. Lighting. So lighting is not just to make you to be able to see stuff, right? It's to create the emotion, the mood. For example, you see when Peter is lonely and defeated, lighting needs to tell the story, right? To see this man and his huge shadow haunting him. They're all carefully planned by the lighting art, the talented lighting and lighters and animators at our company. And also the graphic arts. So all the stickers you see on the fridge, the posters, they were all designed and created by graphic artists and got implemented into game by the 3D artists. And all the books, all the photos. So that's also part of my responsibility. To know more about this, we actually had this talk at Nomon, the School of Visual Effects, Games and Animation in LA. So 3 of our leads. So the second person from left is Gavin. He's our character lead. And then Jason, the second one from the right, is our environment lead, and Brian is the cinematic animation lead. They had a talk with Noman on how to become a better game artist, thinking like a game designer. This is a very useful talk. You can just go to YouTube and search for Noman Insomniac Games better artist, and you can see this video. It's pretty long, it's like 2 hours. And from there, you'll learn a lot of interesting points about how a video game artist can work and think like a designer and contribute to the project together. So I wouldn't go into too much about, or steal too much of their points, but you can check it out later. Also, about the Spider-Man project, there are a lot of things that we couldn't discuss, but we did release a lot of information, and we are the cover story of this month's Game Informer. So you can get this magazine at GameStop if you're a member or purchase it. Or if you are really eager to know more about it, you can purchase the digital version of the article at Game Informer's official website. So you can download the PDF file. And there are a lot of cool information in there. So I won't go too much into that as well. And then the game will be released on September the 7th to PS4 only. And there are the collector's editions of the game with multiple suits and gadgets. So very awesome. Okay, so moving on back to my experience. We have like 3 minutes left, so I'll go through the last few points before we can have a Q&A session. So for me, it wasn't a straightforward path for me to go from where I was to where I am now. I'm from China, so for me to be able to work and study in this country, we need to spend a lot more effort than probably most of you are or will be. But also, I'm trying to organize my thoughts so it's concise but helpful. Also, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was at your age, when I was in high school or in college. I didn't know I wanted to do video games, so I had to do a lot of different things to pave my road to get to where I am. So my point is, if for all those disadvantages I reached where I am today, you should definitely believe in the fact that you can also do that, probably at a higher stage, so achieve higher achievements when you are at my age or even younger than me. So there's no reason that you couldn't do what I did with all the resources you have, with the advantage of figuring out what you want to do early in your career or in your age. So there are just a few advices for you guys based on my personal experience. This may not be right or universally applying to everyone, but I think these are unique and then these are authentic. These won't be the same thing that other producers will come here and tell you, because they're my unique path. And based on my own experience, I learned that you need to be really hungry and focused at all times. I mean, it's okay for you to have a wider spectrum of interest earlier in your career or in your life, but the earlier you started to get focused on, the earlier you are entering the competition with all the talents in the world, right? Not just in your country anymore. We're entering a globalization phase, whether you like it or not. So the better you figure that out, the better you enter the competition with everybody else. But just bear in mind that you may not be able to get what you want immediately, most of the time, but you need to have the patience and you need to have the true grit to do the drill, right? To get what you want. Although it may take you years for you to be able to see the result. You just need to be able to bear it and then be patient. Like this tiger, he's probably waiting from spring to winter to hunt a deer, but at the end, he won't be hungry because he had done the right thing. And then the next point is you need to follow your passion, right? Whatever that is. Maybe you wouldn't end up being a video game professional, but you definitely need to have a passion no matter what that is. And just pursue that, put all you have in there. Although sometimes the path may get really bumpy, right? All you can't see the end of it. It's too foggy. You can only see all the the obstacles in front of you. And that's probably most of the time earlier in your career. You got defeated one time after another and you just never see success in front of you. But at that moment, it's important that you tell yourself, eventually you will reach the destination you want to, as long as you know where you are going and you just keep going, right? And the next thing is you need to be willing to do anything that can take you there. By that, I don't mean you have to be a boss boy, but if that's what it takes, you do need to. It's a metaphor. And no matter how tough it gets sometimes, right? It's just, it's hard. Like, when people give talks like this to people, they say, hey, guys, just never give up, right? Someday you'll reach it. It's not that easy. Like, once you go out of the door of the school, you'll realize that it's a lot tougher than anybody like me that's telling you how tough it is. It's really tough. You're competing with talents from the whole world. they're all coming to, well, no, they're not all like, they're, for every job opportunity, for every scholarship, there will be tons of people from all over the world competing with you. You just need to know that is a fact, no matter you like it or not, and you need to do the drill as hard as they do it, and then you'll be able to compete and succeed. Also, don't be a dick to anyone, right? Under any circumstances. That's a big taboo in the industry because the industry is very small. I find this image that tells the story really well. You never know. So always treat anyone in your life or in your career with respect. So I didn't know what is the situation here in the state anymore. It's getting a little complicated, so just in case, this image. In case it's kind of blue here, not that red. Or if you don't like this as well, you're liberal, this should work universally, right? Even if you're an alien from another planet, this works. So just treat everyone with respect. And with that said, thank you very much, everyone, for your time.
All right, so we do have a few minutes for some questions here.
So, how do you and your team deal with stress and crunch and the balance with stress and creativity?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the thing is, no one wants to deal with them, but it's a fact. Like I said, the time is the most valuable resource in video game development because you always ended up doing a project, no matter how well you planned in the beginning, with less time than you needed to complete it. So we're at the phase of closing the project right now, since we're shipping it this year, and we're at the phase now. And there are a huge amount of stress with us, but we're dealing with it in a positive way, which means that we have a solid plan we're trying to hit, and we knew that this plan will be changed, and we will be hitting on the plan. So the important part, to answer your question, is that no matter what the obstacles are, you always need to have an understanding of it. So as a producer, you need to have the understanding, and then you need to make a plan and present the plan to your team and get their buy-ins. So they need to believe you that if they follow your plan, we can pull this off, right? We can succeed at the end. And when things change again, you update the plan and you communicate with them again. So the part of the producer's job is to constantly communicate and update the plans to your team, to your colleagues, to your stakeholders. So they all have faith and confidence in you succeeding in this project together as a team. And in terms of the stress, so the thing is, once the plan is out, you always see that the team has to do more work. So for a standard 40-hour dev team week, you probably have a plan for him to do 80 hours of work. So he needs to crunch like all the time and comes in over the weekend. So a technical problem approach is that you prioritize his work. So this is software development. Things always didn't get done at the end, but those things need to be the least important tasks for the project. So when they didn't get done, it doesn't affect the wholesomeness of the project. So you still need to have your team focus on the most important jobs. You know, although sometimes that means they still need to crunch a little bit to get the work done. But this is, hey, AAA game development. There is no easy path in there. You need to create awesomeness that no one has created before, so that takes effort, right? So the team understands that. So when they do have to come in and crunch, they know that this is all for the good, as long as they believe in your plan. So it's important that you sync up with your team all the time and don't make them feel like no matter how hard they work, they can work like 7 days a week, they still wouldn't get the game done. If that's the problem, then that's a big problem, right? They will just start, saying really negative things and give up because they don't see the future. But you do need to paint the picture for them, although sometimes it's really hard. It's not just optimism, it's optimism plus the belief in your plan. And did I answer your question? All right, cool.
Being a producer, you say that you cover many areas, including for producing a game. What degree of flexibility do you need to have in your position to complete the job and, well, to keep your sanity?
Let me see. So I think it takes different types of abilities for a producer to do this job well at different studios. So when I was at a smaller studio, I have to do a lot of different jobs, a lot more different jobs than what I have to do right now, which is a medium-sized studio. So it required a little bit of entrepreneurship, I would say, because it's at the end, you are the person who's responsible for the whole thing, right? If the project failed, no one's going to blame the artist, right? It's all on you because you're the one that's holding the wheel of the ship. And sometimes, well, how to say this? There are a lot of things you need to do. Sometimes you just need to find out what does the team need the most and provide that to them. At times, it could be what the team need most at the time is just a nice meal, right? You just need to make sure that you order the meal well and then on time so everyone can have a good meal before they crunch the midnight. You know, at other times, there are much bigger things you need to figure out. For example, you need to fit in maybe thousands of Mondays into your schedule without the extra time and budget, right? That's a significant challenge for anyone to figure out. And that requires you to work with a lot of other people to sync up and come up with a plan. And when you're at a smaller studio, you probably need to do things like when I was at Capers, I had to do the thing when we moved from one office to another one, I had to do a 3D visualization of the whole office with all the furniture in the right place. So the owners of the office were working for me. So basically I asked Terry and David, the two owners of the office, say, hey guys, where's the matrix, right? And they're like, okay, let's go do it. And then they just knee down and then pulled out the tape measurements and measured all the furniture in the studio and then gave me the spreadsheets. And I use that in the 3D program to create all those in the space so it's correct. So when we move into the right space, we have everything laid out correctly. So that's part of the thing you have to do, if that's what it takes. It's almost like doing your own business, right? You can't say, oh, this is not my job, I won't do it. It's whatever that takes you to deliver to success is your job as a producer. You just need to figure that out. So what's in your mind, in your sight, is the end result, the success. That's all it is. It could be anything that you need to do. So, hi.
So a lot of the time I hear that production teams just don't play the game that they make because they've been, they're the ones who made it. They've been looking at it for so long. So my question is, do you play your own games?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes and no. So you're right. You're not wrong. The thing is, especially for producers, when you are in the thick of doing things, playing the games could be one extra overhead for you in terms of getting work done, but you definitely need to play it as much as possible. So not just me, a lot of team members, when they are focusing on their work, they may not have the time to play the work that everyone else did because this game is too big, right? To play through the whole game, I won't give you an accurate number, it probably take you days, like full days, 8-hour days. So what we did to address that is that the project manager team at Insomniac, we had this idea of after each milestone, we give the team 2 full days to play through the whole game. So they don't need to do work on that. There are no meetings scheduled in those 2 days, so you can just sit down, grab a drink and some popcorn if you want, and then play through the whole game as far as you can, and have a fuller understanding of your job, your work, and then everybody else's work, and then provide feedback to the team so we can improve upon that. So that kind of addressed the issue of people don't have time playing just the part they're making, but looking into the big picture and see how the game plays now. So.
Approximately how much time in pre-planning would you spend doing just background research on character concepts and just planning the background of the area that you're going to be in?
Yeah. So we had to spend a lot of time on that because, for example, in this game, it's a Spider-Man game. It's a Marvel IP, right? So everyone knows Spider-Man very well. Does that make our job easier doing the background research? Not at all, because a lot of Marvel fans where all of them are very specific about what they want. And Marvel is very specific about what they want. They want to do this thing right. So we need to not only make a Spider-Man game that looks good, but make a Spider-Man game that's different than any other Spider-Man games you played before, and different than the movies. And then our Peter Parker in this game is older than the traditional Peter Parker, right? He's 23 years old, so he had 8 years of experience as Spider-Man swinging in New York City. He's a little bit older, more sophisticated, and more mature now, although he's as funny and as a kid as before. If you play the game, you'll find out. He's still that awesome, let's just say. So it's a different level of research, and we did have to. So our creative director, Brian Inhar, he is a huge Spider-Man fan. He dressed up. He put Spider-Man suits inside of his shirt when he was in school, and he got into trouble for that. So that passion, that level of passion, led us to have this unique vision for this game. And all the research we did in the pre-production became our design or art documents, and we use those as our Bibles to create a game. And to answer your question, a lot of work went into that. Although this is not a new IP, but for newer IPs like For Honor, for example, even more drills and work needs to go in there, because we need to study the histories of the Vikings, right? Samurais, their religions, their culture, the time, how people talk during the time, what people do, what do they believe in, and what's the geography of the lands they live in. How do we put them together in one land and make them look believable, not just a bunch of same AI characters wearing different costumes. So when a player play that game, they feel like they are in the fantasy world where 3 times and lands collide, and then not just like you're playing a game with a bunch of AI NPC characters with swords, right? So that gives you the immersive feeling. So that's the hard part. You're creating a world, essentially, not just a video game sometimes.
All right, let's thank Daniel for his time this morning.
Just one more thing. So the credits, I have to do this because I don't own the rights of all the images in this presentation. This is a professional thing to do. So when you do presentations, remember, put all the links in there. Since this is non-for-profit and for education, that's okay, but you still need to do this. And our career site, I need to use this opportunity to show you how you can take the next step, right, the real step. But right now you're thinking, oh, someday I may need to enter the industry, right? I need to do the hard work of do job interviews, write resumes, send my applications out. But that day, you need to realize that day is coming. You need to do that now, because for our internships, it's every year you have new opportunities. So I sent these documents for 3 majors. So there's animation intern, game design intern, and programming interns to Marty and Mel. So they will be able to share these documents to you. And what you can do is you go to insomniac.com/career, and then you find internship over here. You can create a profile for yourself, and you can enter the information you have now. You may not have much, but once you do that, you get notifications once we have new internship opportunities open. Then you can, essentially these things do not change, right? See, this is from last year, and it's still the same requirements that we are looking for at interns. So that means you just need to figure out these 3-4 paragraphs and nail them, and be that person we're looking for, or any other studios are looking for. Get ready for that at any time. So when you get an email from Insomniac saying, hey, we are looking for an intern for animation this summer, you're ready to apply, because you're eligible to do that. Once you're out of school, you're no longer eligible, right? So this is time limited. You need to really think in a way that, I'm in the battle right now. It's not 3 years later. It's not 2 years later. It's right now. You need to be able to nail down the things that they're looking for. So yeah, that's a lot. Thank you very much.